Amos Opeyemi's first season at Nice, not much happened.
This card is useless.
He clearly wasn't ready for first team football, only making 6 appearances off the bench, while his dribbling skills were beginning to be compromised in order to get smarter on the pitch. Adjusting to a new country is difficult, and you've seen many players in the past struggle, so Amos had to be patient. But with playing time looking slim heading into the 2025-26 campaign, Nice boss Albert Capellas decided to send him out on loan. Then the loan deal fell through because apparently you can only lend 7 players to French clubs.
Going nowhere. I'm dead.
So, this guy was sacrificed, and Amos went to Angers in Ligue 2. With members like Nabil Bentaleb, Souleymane Doumbia, and former Southampton player Yann Valery, the side was strong and favorites for promotion. Amos' debut arrived off the bench in a 1-0 loss to Nimes.
So you don't even deserve to exist.
In the following fixture with Guingamp, he would make his starting debut, and that proved to be a lot better. Off a free kick, he found his teammate Adrien Hounou for a header to make it 1-0. Arnaud Nordin later doubled the lead, as Amos earned a victory for his team. Now, if you came here for more goal contributions, you'd have to wait a whole lot longer, as despite earning 25 more starts across the season, that was his only assist. Crazy, since he played as a cam in every single one of those. Although, let's keep in mind that even JJ Okocha wasn't lighting the stat sheet up when he started in the lower German tiers. Nevertheless, he did bag a couple in the French Cup back in November, but the club were eliminated in the 10th round to Lorient in January. That's when the form began to fall apart for Angers, as promotion was beginning to look uncertain. Even when Amos scored his first goal for the club, it was just a throwaway, as Hoyland, not that one, scored a brace. That was on matchday 27, which was followed up by a 0-0 draw to Grenoble. Then, with the score level half an hour in versus promotion rivals Dijon, Amos would take the lead, which was crucial, for about 6 minutes. Brian Soumare found his second for Dijon, as the game ended 2-2. Amos wouldn't play too amazingly in the next 3 fixtures, but Angers earned 7 points, raising them to 3rd, 3 points behind the automatic spots of Dijon and Saint-Etienne, but both had to play Brest, who were fighting for a spot as well. For Angers, Sochaux were their opponents, and they got 3 penalties, and they missed 2 of them. Luckily, Bentaleb scored the rebound off the second. Meanwhile, both Dijon and Saint-Etienne drew, dropping the gap. On the final match day, Angers faced FC Annecy, who were trying to avoid relegation, but their fate was doomed. In the 7th minute, a cross arrived for Amos, and as he leapt like Didier Drogba, he got pretty lucky that it went in. With Camara's strike not too long later, Angers won, and best of all, Dijon and Saint-Etienne lost, meaning Angers finished on top thanks to Amos's brilliant goal, his first piece of silverware in the professional game. And this was a good building block, as he made some solid improvements to his game. In the lead up to the following season, Amos got called up to the Nigeria national team for the 2026. So moving on, that wasn't a good omen, as he got news from Nice boss Capellas that he wouldn't be involved with the team this campaign and needed another loan. He had several options, including returning to Angers to help their first season in Ligue 1 after 3 years in France's 2nd tier. He joined Toulouse.
I wouldn't go anywhere near him.
They do have better facilities, but would that end up being helpful for his development? Not at all. Despite being promised and labeled as a regular starter, Laurent Batla played a 4-4-2, and once he realized Amos wasn't suitable for any of the roles in his tactic, he just left him on the bench, where he made just 1 appearance off it by the time he got sacked. That was in October, with Toulouse having a mere 5 points. These were enraged, but calmed down a little after Omar Daf was appointed. The former Dijon manager knew about Amos's ability and promised above all to get the club out of the relegation spots, and assured Nice that Amos would be in his plans. He was a man of his word, as no matter how shit he played, Amos was in the starting 11 week in and week out. He earned 21 starts for Toulouse, gathering 2 goals and 2 assists with a 6.84 match rating. Not great, and while he wasn't improving the way many expected, he did enough to help Toulouse avoid relegation and even finish above Nice. It's not like that's an impressive feat or anything, since they finished in 14th, which resulted in the sacking of Albert Capellas. He never really gave youth a chance, with the youngest regular starter being 26. That's where Jakub Nistrup arrives. With his accomplishments at FC Copenhagen and the ability to develop some of Denmark's finest talents, he was ready to not just give Amos a chance, but several other promising talents. specifically in the midfield, with Algerian Abdelkader Moussaoui, Mehdi Bousson, whose hair in-game is red, and finally Marvin Watiu, who was the gem of the academy. They grooved with Amos's vibe, but he decided to hang out with some of the more balanced and experienced players. Could Amos cement himself in the starting 11 and develop into the player many in his homeland expected? After 3 years being a contracted Nice player, we got to find out, as on opening day, he got the start versus Nantes. With the lack of multiple explosive wingers in the lineup, Eaststrip decided to use the wingerless winger variation of the 4-3-3 that Amos was ever so familiar with. His partner would be Sofiane Diop, who found Zerben in behind for the opening goal. Half an hour later, Nice would have a corner kick, and from the clearance, Amos got on the ball, beat the defender, and found the back of the net. His first one with his parent club. A fantastic start, which was followed by another win against Strasbourg. Amos played well again, as he was unlucky not to get an assist. A solid beginning, but he was having concerns. There were rumors of him not being called up to the Nigeria squad, so he began complaining to his teammates that he wants to be playing more to keep his spot in the national setup. They were confused, as he was starting, but he wasn't called up for a few friendlies, which caused paranoia. He told Eaststrip that he needs to be playing regularly. The Dane was very perplexed, and asked if he had short-term memory loss. At the end of the day, if you play well, you will start, but you're young. You won't be perfect every single time, so matches from the bench won't hurt you in the long term. Nice lost a couple key individuals over the last few seasons, which had impacted the quality on the pitch. So when tougher opponents came up in the schedule, the team fought hard, but painfully lost to Monaco and Lille while drawing Rennes at home. Over the ensuing month, it wasn't looking pretty for Nice, as Ajaccio was the only win you'd see in some time. Amos played well, and Zerben achieved a hat-trick, but the matches around that were ugly. A loss to Bordeaux, a draw to Montpellier, wasteful finishing in a draw to Lyon, followed by Amos and his teammates dropping an absolute stinker against Marseille. Then, down 2-1 versus Clermont, the Nigerian was subbed in with 15 to go and had a glorious opportunity to equalize, but he scuffed it, and the players left the pitch in a chorus of boos. Diop was injured for the last few fixtures, but was returning. The Frenchman garnered a lot of respect, and had the role to mentor Amos, Moussaoui, and Buisson. His return signaled a turnaround for Nice, as they won 4 of the next 5 games, only just losing to PSG. Diop of course balled out, scoring 4 in these matches, but there was a new kid on the block. From South Africa, but I'm just gonna call him Motebang. He was bought on deadline day from Supersport United and couldn't hit the net to save his life. I almost remembered him from the African Championship of Nations a few years ago, where he scored in the final, but never thought he'd see him here. While he was very rough around the edges, the man had pretty good physicals and was determined to try and score again and again. In this mentioned run, he banged in his first 3 of the season, which included this back post header versus PSG. Amos also had contributions, like diving to win a pen versus Lens. Still, the performances were admirable, and with them playing the Nigerian's former Loney club next, defensive midfielder Christensen got sent off before half, forcing Amos to be sacrificed. This began more mediocrity for the club, an elimination in the French Cup to Dijon, drawing the worst team in the league, drawing Monaco, and losing to Rennes. All in January, which was when 2 players were signed, Vasco Sosa and Ivan Morante. Despite them not really being needed, at least a few defenders arrived to provide depth, as Nice were in 9th, still in search of Europe. Through all of this, Amos was slowly improving, but not to the pace of his French colleagues, Buisson and Watiu. The latter rarely ever put in a bad game, and made sure he never left anything on the pitch. That of course included his match versus Lille, where he and Moussaoui contributed to Zerben's brace. A tough draw at Bordeaux occurred straight after, but at Ajaccio, Amos won the ball to find Diop, and he assisted Motebang. Unfortunately, Nice keeper Karneshki decided to be a moron and allowed the big show to score from half. After the interval, Amos completely missed the net, but he'd make up for it by taking Buisson's pass and getting the lead back for Nice. That was enough, and Amos' teammates would make it an undefeated February with a late winner versus Montpellier. Lyon and Marseille were occupying European spots that Nice wanted, so these 2 next fixtures could really swing the season. At the Parc Olympique Lyonnais, Amos stepped up, as Buisson found him for the quick opener. It was a tight contest between the 2 clubs, with both missing big chances, but that wouldn't be the case for Ikone. Then just before halftime, Simeone would nod in the go-ahead goal. Nice continued to miss some decent chances as they fell 2-1. A tough result, and the team knew Marseille was a must-win for European football. 3-0 32 minutes in had the Allianz Riviera roaring, And while Marseille brought 2 back in the second half, Nice found the momentum they needed. Could they at least grab the last European spot with 8 games remaining? They lost to Clermont. Yeah, I almost dropped a stinker in that one. However, he was competent enough in the next 2 fixtures, which saw a Diop brace versus Lorient, and Mota Bang also grabbing 2 at Reims. With Lille losing 3 in a row, that gave 7th place to Nice, although they had the French Cup final trump card. But it's PSG and FM, of course they lost it. However, they rebuilt their form by that point, while Kylian Mbappe'd Amos. But he and his South African teammate were able to contribute in wins versus Lens and Metz. 7th was still safe, as Marseille were being overwhelmed by the Europa League, seeing them only win in Ligue 1 once in April. After being eliminated by Porto in the Europa League, PSG smacked them up on the penultimate match day. Oh, they actually drew. Well, that doesn't matter, since Nice won their final 2 matches, which included Amos getting 1 against Nantes. However, he's not quite there yet. The Nigerian is scoring more than some would suspect, but his assists were pretty low, although that may be down to Motobank's poor finishing. Still, the room is there for him to grow, and with a good group of promising players around him, he'll finally experience European football for the very first time next season.